I'm glad you're here because today we're stepping into one of the most satisfying psychological twists you will ever witness in the world of narcissistic behavior. It's that rare, electric moment when the narcissist confidently walks away, expecting you to collapse into panic, to chase, to beg, to crumble, only to discover a silence so powerful it shakes their entire identity. And the question that haunts them is simple: why didn't you run after me? For the narcissist, the story they write in their mind is always the same. They believe you exist to feed their ego, to soothe their insecurities, to validate their worth. So when they pull away dramatically, strategically, they expect you to come running. They think your fear of losing them is greater than your desire for peace. They think they've trained you to respond exactly as they predict. They never imagine a world where you simply let them go. The moment your silence hits them, something inside their mind fractures. This wasn't part of their script. In their fantasy, you were supposed to chase them down emotionally, desperately pledging your love, your loyalty, your willingness to suffer just to keep them close. But when you didn't, they felt something they rarely feel: vulnerability. A cold, creeping panic begins to rise beneath their confidence. Because here's the truth: they didn't leave for freedom or clarity. They left to test their power over you. They wanted proof that you were still emotionally imprisoned by their manipulation. They wanted to see how quickly you would break without their approval. Your lack of reaction becomes a psychological earthquake that shakes their foundation, reminding them that power can crumble in silence. When you don't chase the narcissist, the silence becomes deafening for them. Every hour that passes feels like a blow to their ego. They check their phone, expecting your name to appear. They tell themselves you're playing games. They reassure themselves you're just being stubborn. But deep down, something darker whispers to them: what if you've finally seen through them? This terrifying possibility gnaws at them. Narcissists survive by controlling narrative and perception. If you're not chasing, they lose control of both. They're left alone with the one thing they fear more than anything else: the reality that you may no longer need them. And for someone who feeds on emotional dependency, that is a nightmare more powerful than abandonment itself. Suddenly, you become larger in their mind than you ever were in the relationship. Your silence grows louder, heavier, more confusing. They can't understand why you're not reacting the way they predicted. They replay everything, searching for signs that you still need them, still miss them, still crave their presence. But your stillness becomes a mirror they desperately want to avoid. Narcissists rely on emotional chaos to stay relevant. When you respond calmly, or worse, when you don't respond at all, you remove the fuel they need to maintain their inflated sense of self. They start spiraling internally, questioning their ability to control you, doubting their own allure, and doubt is the one emotion their ego cannot tolerate. Your silence also awakens something unexpected: curiosity. Narcissists are obsessed with the things they can't predict. The moment they realize you're no longer emotionally predictable, you become a mystery they feel compelled to solve. And nothing haunts a narcissist more than someone they can no longer read, no longer exploit, no longer pull back into their cycle. So here we begin, at the exact moment the narcissist realizes the game has shifted, the power has flipped, and the chase they expected from you has collapsed into a silence that rattles their entire sense of identity. Stay with me, because in the next chapter, we're going to break down exactly why your silence hits them harder than any confrontation ever could. When the narcissist realizes you're not chasing, the first emotion that hits them isn't sadness or longing, it's disbelief. Their mind scrambles to make sense of your silence because it challenges the entire identity they built around being irresistible, irreplaceable, and always desired. They convince themselves you must be bluffing. They tell themselves you're trying to manipulate them. But beneath all those excuses, a small, unsettling truth begins to rise. You might actually be done. This is where the psychological unraveling begins. Narcissists operate from a core of fragile self-worth, disguised as arrogance. Your refusal to pursue them is not just a reaction, it is a threat. It exposes the one truth they've spent their entire life running from. They are not in control, and losing control, especially over someone they once dominated, creates a crack in their carefully constructed emotional armor. They begin obsessively replaying every moment of your last interaction. Every word, every expression, every small sign you might still be attached, is examined like forensic evidence. They desperately want to find something that proves you're still under their spell. When they find nothing, the panic deepens. Their mind becomes a battlefield where ego and fear collide violently. Narcissists survive by believing they are the center of your emotional world. When you step back, their fantasy collapses. Suddenly, your silence isn't just an action, it's an accusation. It tells them they weren't enough to keep you. It tells them their manipulation failed. It tells them you might have found someone better, healthier, stronger. And that possibility punches straight into their deepest wound, abandonment. This is when they start comparing themselves to the imaginary version of your new life. They picture you happier without them, more peaceful, more confident, more alive. The image tortures them, because it flips the power dynamic they depend on. You were supposed to break without them. Instead, you look like you're thriving. That inversion ignites a rage they desperately try to hide. But here's the twist. Beneath the rage lies something even more disturbing. Envy. They resent your healing because it symbolizes freedom they can't attain. Narcissists are trapped inside their own emotional maze, unable to self-reflect, unable to grow. Watching you rise from the pain they caused reminds them of their own stagnation, and envy quickly mutates into obsession. Narcissists don't process separation the way healthy people do. You're not a memory to them, you're a resource. And when a resource stops responding, they panic, like someone who lost access to a vital supply. They open old photos, scroll through conversations, search for anything that gives them a hit of the emotional power they once held. It feels like withdrawal, because to them, it is. The silence becomes a mirror, reflecting everything they cannot bear to confront. Without your emotional reactions, they're forced to sit with their own emptiness. There is no admiration, no validation, no reassurance. The stillness exposes the truth they've buried for years. Without attention, they feel like nothing. Your lack of pursuit shines a harsh light on that internal void. This is the moment the fear hits them full force. Not fear of losing you, but fear of losing their grip on the identity they built through you. You were their reflection, their proof of desirability, their emotional echo. Without you responding, they fear fading into irrelevance. And irrelevance, to a narcissist, feels like psychological death. So, they begin crafting a story to soothe their ego, telling themselves you'll come back eventually, that you always do, that no one else will understand them the way you did. This fabricated narrative offers temporary relief, but deep inside they feel the tremor of uncertainty, and that tremor is what drives the next dramatic shift in their behavior, a shift we will expose in the next chapter. This is the moment everything shifts. The narcissist finally truly realizes that you are not coming after them, not today, not tomorrow, not ever, and that realization hits them like cold water thrown onto a sleeping body. It shocks their nervous system, it disrupts the illusion of control they cling to, and for the first time, they genuinely feel the weight of losing someone who once fed their ego like a lifeline. At first, they try to pretend it doesn't bother them. They will put on a show, posting pictures, acting happy, laughing louder than usual, exaggerating their joy for an invisible audience. But beneath all that performance, a storm is forming. The silence you give them doesn't fade away. It grows louder. It echoes in every corner of their mind, reminding them of your sudden undeniable independence. They start questioning everything: your loyalty, your attachment, your emotional connection. The narcissist built their confidence on the belief that you would always choose them, even after they hurt you. But now, they see your absence as rebellion, as betrayal, as a direct challenge to their superiority. And that challenge triggers a psychological unraveling they never expected. The narcissist now begins rewriting history. They convince themselves you were the one who needed them, that you were obsessed, that you could never walk away. This rewriting isn't malicious. It's survival. Their ego cannot handle the truth, so it manufactures a version where they still hold the upper hand. But every time they repeat this story, a piece of them knows it's a lie. This inner conflict sparks a powerful emotional reaction. The urge to pull you back in, not because they love you, not because they regret anything, but because your silence challenges their identity. They need to be chosen to feel significant. They need to be pursued to feel powerful. Without that pursuit, they feel invisible. And invisibility terrifies them more than any heartbreak. This is when they start testing the waters. A harmless like on your post, a vague message, a random emoji, something that gives them plausible deniability, but also invites you to break the silence. They're fishing for reassurance without ever admitting the desperation behind it. Every little test is just a probe to see if they can still pull your emotional strings. But when you don't respond, their frustration grows. They expected you to crumble. They expected you to flood them with explanations, apologies, or questions. Instead, you give them nothing. And that nothingness becomes unbearable. It forces them to confront a truth they never planned for. You've developed a strength that no longer centers them. At this point, the narcissist may try a more direct approach. A sudden message, a dramatic confession, a nostalgic memory designed to hit you right where it hurts. They know what used to work. They know the buttons you once responded to. But now, those buttons no longer deliver results, and that failure cracks their confidence more than anything else. The turning point becomes undeniable. They realize they've lost something they can't easily replace. Your emotional accessibility. You were once predictable, safe, a guaranteed source of validation, but now, you're a mystery, and mysteries torment the narcissistic mind. They need answers, closure, resolution, but none are available, and that absence becomes a mirror reflecting their inadequacy. Finally, the panic transforms into fear. Fear that you've truly outgrown them. Fear that someone else now holds your attention. Fear that you've entered a world they have no access to. And in that fear, they suffer a psychological blow they didn't anticipate. This moment marks the beginning of their internal collapse. A collapse we'll expose fully in the next chapter. This is where their facade begins to break. The narcissist has spent years mastering a mask of confidence. Calm, charming, untouchable. But now your refusal to chase them fractures that mask in ways they can no longer hide from themselves. Their internal world becomes unstable. They feel the ground shifting beneath them. And for the first time they cannot deny the fear rising in their throat. Your silence becomes the loudest truth they've ever heard. It tells them that their charm has limits, that their games finally backfired, and that their control over you was never as solid as they believed. Narcissists thrive on certainty, routines of power, predictable emotional reaction, but your unexpected independence throws their inner map into chaos. They don't know where they stand anymore. The narcissist begins obsessing. They replay old conversations, re-examine your behavior, wonder when things changed. They tell themselves that you must still want them. You're just being dramatic, but every passing day without your response contradicts that narrative. The lack of attention becomes a psychological vacuum that sucks away their confidence piece by piece. Soon, they start constructing elaborate fantasies to soothe themselves. They imagine you suffering, missing them, wanting to reach out, but holding back. These fantasies aren't entertainment, they're emotional survival techniques. Without them, the narcissist would be forced to face the reality that you've regained the strength they believed you didn't have. But reality always wins. And when it hits brutally. They notice your glow returning. They notice your silence growing stronger, not weaker. They hear from mutual friends that you're doing better, happier, lighter. Every sign of your healing becomes a reminder of their failure, and nothing tortures a narcissist more than watching someone they once controlled walk freely. This is where they begin spiraling socially. They seek new sources of validation, quick connections, shallow attention, temporary flings. They chase reactions to fill the emptiness your absence created. But none of it works. Each new person lacks the emotional depth you gave them. Each attempt at control feels weaker, less effective. The high they once relied on doesn't hit the same. The narcissist may start talking badly about you behind your back, not because they hate you, but because they need a story that makes them feel powerful again. If they can't control your reality, they'll try to control their version of it. Their reputation narrative becomes their new coping mechanism. But even that fails when people notice something off in their desperation. Inside, they feel a growing emptiness, one they've ignored for years. Your absence exposes the hollow space they always tried to hide. They used you as emotional insulation, a shield from their own self-awareness. Without you absorbing their chaos, they must face their inner void alone, and that confrontation is something they've avoided for their entire life. Their emotional stability begins cracking. They feel restless, anxious, irritable, unpredictable. The loss of control intensifies their insecurity. They may lash out at others, make impulsive choices, or spiral into unhealthy habits. Your silence didn't just unsettle them, it destabilized the entire system they built. to maintain their fragile sense of superiority. And now something unexpected happens. The narcissist becomes afraid of you, not physically, emotionally, because your silence proved something they never wanted to believe. You were always stronger than they imagined. You were never the fragile, dependent person they convinced themselves you were. Your absence became your power, and that power now haunts them. Here's the part the narcissist never prepared for. The moment your silence evolves into peace. Not forced peace, not survival peace, but the kind that settles naturally into your life, like a calm ocean after a violent storm. They sense this shift even from a distance. They can feel you letting go, and that terrifies them, because they built their identity on the belief that you never would. To the narcissist, your healing is a threat. It means their narrative is collapsing. It means their role in your story is shrinking. It means the emotional power they once held is dissolving right in their hands. They're used to being the center of chaos, the source of pain, the reason you stayed awake at night. But now your mind is quiet, and that silence exposes their insignificance. This is when they finally realize something devastating. You were never the weak one. You were the anchor, the emotional grounding, the steady presence holding their unstable world together. They thought you depended on them, but in truth, they depended on your empathy, your patience, your softness, things they mistook for weakness, but now recognize as rare power. You see, narcissists rarely face consequences in the beginning. Their charm shields them. Their manipulations confuse people. Their confidence distracts from the damage. But when someone like you walks away, someone who truly cared, someone who offered depth, loyalty, and emotional safety, that loss becomes the consequence they can't escape. Your absence forces them to confront the truth they've spent their whole life avoiding. They pushed away the one person who genuinely saw their humanity. Not the mask, not the performance, but the fragile, terrified person behind it. And the narcissist will never again find someone who mirrors their emotional wounds with compassion, instead of judgment. But the real healing begins with you realizing this. You didn't lose anything. You escaped something. You broke a cycle that countless people stay trapped in for years. You reclaimed your power without shouting, without fighting, without performing. You simply stepped back, stayed still, and let reality reveal what it needed to. Your healing is not revenge, it's evolution. You're not trying to hurt them. You're outgrowing them. You're building a life where emotional manipulation has no place, where peace isn't temporary, and where your worth isn't determined by someone else's wounded ego. You're learning to love yourself in a way they were never capable of loving you. And the narcissist feels that. They feel the door closing. They feel your energy shifting. They feel the loss of access, the loss of control, the loss of significance. They may try to return. They may try to pull you back. They may dig through old memories, old patterns, old emotions. But the difference now is simple. You finally see through all of it. So when they think of you now, it isn't with the arrogance they once had. It's with a haunting sense of regret, mixed with fear. Not regret for what they did, regret for what they lost. Because losing someone like you is different. It's not losing supply. It's losing stability, losing softness, losing the last person who ever tried to understand them. And as for you, you walk forward. You rise. You let the past become a lesson, not a prison. And the final truth is this. The narcissist may spend years haunted by your absence, but you, in your healing, are finally free. And freedom will always be the ending they never saw coming.